Today's daf we're going to be learning a Shevuot daf Kaf Aleph. Today's daf is sponsored by Ruth Leah Kahan, Jessica Schklar, and Emily Michelson in commemoration of the seventh year outside of their mother, Kadima Friedman Michelson, Kadima Bat Harav Abram Zvi V'chaya. We miss her every day. Okay, there's a study guide for today, and Alana Steinhain Shiur should be going up later today, on a very interesting topic. It's going to be a two-part series on a topic that has a lot to do with Shevuot, which is Mushba Va'ome Mehar Sinai, which we're going to see toward the end of our daf, about this idea that it's a great topic for Shavuot also, which is coming up, which is that, right, we were all kind of sworn in at Sinai to the Torah, and then what if I take a Shevuot to forbid something that I was already forbidden at Sinai? Is there validity to that oath or not? We'll get back to that at the end of class. Okay, I want to start now with Rav Dimi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that we saw yesterday. We're going to have a big machloka between Rav Dimi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan and Rabin, who comes and brings the tradition in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah, in the name of Rabbi Abal, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that with a different approach as to what is considered Shevuot Sheker, what is considered Shevuot Shav. Why is this so important? Well, it's always important if you're going to get lashes, you need to know what warning to receive, right? If you get the wrong warning, then you don't actually get punished. So they have a debate about what actually Rabbi Yochanan holds. So we saw yesterday, and also there's a chart, so you can look at the chart. I'll share my screen for a quick minute, and then we'll go back to it later. We have Rav Dimi here, who basically says the Shevuot Sheker is on the future, ochal velo ochal, and Shevuot Shav is l'shavar, achalti lo achalti, right? These are the Shevuot Shtayim Shem Arba that we keep referring to. Shtayim lahara u'lehitiv, that's what's in the Torah, to eat or not to eat, something in the future, to do something or not to do something. And Shav is the other two that were added for the purposes of Korban, although if you remember, there's machloket about whether they're added, right? The Mishna where it says they're added is Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yishmael thinks there is no korban on those two, and that's the ones of the past. Okay, so we have lahaba and we have the shavar, and they're both included in shav and sheker. Sheker is I won't do something and then I do it, or I will do something and I don't do it. And shav is I said I did something and it wasn't true. Now, this is not exactly intuitive, and we're going to see that the next interpretation is much more intuitive of where these go. Okay, and then we also just mentioned, it's not on this chart, but konamot, like sort of vows and things like that. If you use the language of konam, then you have lo yachel dvaro, which is you have to keep to what you promised. Okay, then we had this whole thing about shav and sheker echad. We brought its difficulty, we resolved it, and then we said, why are shav and sheker? What does it mean shav and sheker are echad? Okay, this was what we had in they were both said at the same time, right? So then we said, that's to teach you that just like your loken, I'm going to give it according to the conclusion because the Gemara had to switch this. Just like you're liable in sheker and you get lashes for it. Why do you get lashes? Because if I say a shvuah that I will eat, I'm sorry, that I will not eat, and then I do eat, I've done an action, so I get lashes for that. Just like I get lashes for that, I will get lashes also on l'shaval. Okay? And that's the reason. And I want to be very clear here, because according to the next interpretation, we're going to have a completely different reason, and you'll see why when we get there. But the way it works is, since we have shav and sheker, or ne'emru b'dibur echad, they were said at the same time, we're going to say that if shav, right, if sheker is a case where there's an action and you're going to get lashes, you're also going to get lashes when there's no action. Because remember, why is there no action? It's just your words. If I said, I swear I didn't eat yesterday, and you actually did eat, so there's no action involved here that you did wrong. You just took a false oath. Well, you're going to get lashes on that, even though it's a lav she'ein bo ma'aseh. Okay, that's what the Gemara said, to which we kind of ended with. Isn't that obvious though? Because why is it obvious that you're going to get on Shav? Because the pasuk about Shav says, Lo yinakeh Hashem. Hashem won't be able to atone for you. But what do they learn from there? The Beit Din can. So it's obvious we don't need Shav and Sheker to be said at the same time. For us to learn it from Sheker, we could learn it from Shav itself, to which the Gemara said, and this we're going to get to today actually, okay, the last words of yesterday's daf are going to appear later in today's daf, as Rav Papa said to Abaye, which is going to come up in today's discussion, maybe lo yinakeh klal. Maybe it means there's no atonement for this kind of sin. So therefore, no, there's a pasuk that teaches you, right? That's what we need. Shav and Sheker said at the same time. Okay, as we said, that's one possible answer to this difficulty. Okay, I just want to point out that in Hebrew, if your Hebrew is good and you want to listen, Meirav Tubal Kahana Shiur this week on Sugya B'Tana was all about Kiddush and the chiyuvim of Kiddush and things that come out of that sugya, and also about women. So if you're interested in pursuing more, she talks about it, so you can look there. V'i ba'it ema. Another possible answer is Kishem shemibi korban ala sheker, kach mibi korban ala shav. Perhaps, okay, if we already had this difficulty, which is sheker, we wanted to say you get right? Shav and sheker were said together. Why? Because just like you get lashes for future, because you actually did an action and you ate and went against your vow, you'll also get for past, but there's a pasuk for past, so we don't need that. So here's a different answer. Maybe it has nothing to do with lashes, the shav and sheker being ke'echad. And what's it coming to teach you? Keshem shemibi korban ala sheker, kach mibi korban ala shav, Rabbi Akiva. This would be a much better answer, which is in the Torah. This is the whole Shtayim Shem Arba. How did we get to Shtayim Shem Arba, really? So they're saying, oh, maybe this is it. Because if Shav is past and Sheker is future, and we know that on future you bring a korban, that's right, whether you say Ochal or Lo Ochal, either which way, that's where it says in the Torah. If you, that's your classic Shevuot bitui. If you make an expression that is to do something or not to do something, lahara uleitiv, not to do something or to do something, and you accidentally don't keep your promise, then you have to bring a korban. Well, what about the past? Where do we get it from? If shav is past, then we're going to learn it from there. We're going to say, shav and sheker were both said at the same time. Again, I'm just reminding for those who might have missed yesterday's stuff. What does it mean they were said at the same time? In one of the 10 commandments, right, in Shemot, it says, lo taneh b'reachai sheker. In the other one, it says, Lo taneh b'reachai shav. And they say, just like Shamor and Zachor, they were said at exactly the same time, which is to teach you something. What's it to teach you? Shtayim Shem Arba. The two that you bring a korban for, there's actually 4. You also bring it on the past. Okay? And that's assuming we define shav is past and sheker is future, which according to the next interpretation, we're not going to go that way. Okay? So that's what it says. Now, Meitive, we have a bit of a difficulty on this interpretation of Rav Dimi, because we said sheker is for future, shav is for the past. But here's a braita that says, Ezo hi shvuat shav, nishba l'shanot et hayadua la'adam. Shvuat shav is when you try to change something that's known to everybody, like this pillar of stone is a pillar of gold. That's shav. That's in vain. It's totally useless, right? Because it's not true and it's about something in the past. And Shvuat, now, we said it was about something in the past, but we didn't exactly say this. But that's not really going to bother them so much. What's really going to bother them is Shvuat Sheker Nishba Lahachlif. Shvuat Sheker is I take an oath to switch something. Now, what does it mean to switch something? It means to switch something to say, if I ate yesterday and now I switch it and I say, I didn't eat yesterday. Now, that would be on the past. So now we have a problem because Rav Dimi said Sheker is for the future, not for the past. So how do we explain this? It's the answer. Okay, we have an answer. Ema nishba umachlif. Now, it's not that you're changing lehachlif, what happened in the past. You're taking an oath and then you're flipping it, meaning you take an oath, I'm going to eat, and then you don't eat. Or I'm taking an oath, I'm going to eat, and then I don't, or whatever. I'm not going to eat, and I do eat. Okay, so that's how they resolve that contradiction. And with that, we're finished with the first opinion. Now we're going to move on to the second opinion. Ki'ata Ravin, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Amar Rabbi Avau, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, there's 4 people here passing on this tradition. The main point that we're going to focus on, we're going to call it Rabbi Avahu later, okay, because he's number 2 from, he heard it from Rabbi Yochanan and said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and then it was quoted in his name later. We're going to get back to that. So just remember Rabbi Avahu because he's the one we're going to talk about. But before we get there, let's just see what they say. Now this, in my mind, is the much more intuitive approach. If you would ask me, what shav, what sheker, okay, and when do we have lo yachel dvaro, this is probably what you would have come up with, which is, sheker is a lie. So what would be a lie? It's when I take an oath, and I've already lied by taking the oath. Not that I don't fulfill my oath, that's something else. That's lo yachel dvaro. You have to keep to your word. And therefore, he says, achalti v'lo achalti, past, that's sheker. If I get up today and I say, I swore I ate yesterday, and that was an outright lie, I didn't eat yesterday, then that would be a lie, sheker, okay, on the past. And azharate, so then again, if I'm about to take the oath that I ate yesterday, and I really didn't eat yesterday, and you're standing there and you know I didn't eat yesterday, and you come and say, if you do this, you're going to transgress the pasuk, lo tishavu b'shmi l'shaker. Okay? That's what you have to warn me for, according to this interpretation, right? And according to the previous, you'd have to tell me, remember what's future? Future is sheker. Sorry, did I just say it wrong? No, right. Sorry. Achalti below achalti yeshav. You'd have to say to me, lo tisat Shem Hashem Elokecha lashav. Okay, you're taking God's name in vain by saying this. According to this, you're saying, no, you're swearing in God's name falsely. Ochal v'lo ochal, over v'lo yachel dvaro. If I say I am going to eat and then I don't eat, what have I transgressed? Lo yachel dvaro. If I say something, right? The pasuk here, I'm going to read it to you. Ish ki yidur neder laHashem, if you take a vow, o hishavah shvuah, or you take an oath, okay, which is our topic, le'esur isar al nafsho, to forbid something to oneself, lo yachel dvaro, kechol yotzeh mipiv yaseh. Don't desecrate your word, do what you said. That sounds perfect, right? I said I'm going to do something and then I don't do it. I've basically transgressed that prohibition. And what's Shevuot shav, what we would have assumed and what we started before, nishba l'shanot teyadu ala adam. You said this pillar of stone is actually gold, and you took an oath about it, which it totally isn't. And I was thinking about pink elephants, right? You swear the elephants are pink. Okay, that's a lie. So basically, this is a totally different interpretation as to which pasuk matches up with which, right? Which pasuk matches up with which avera, which transgression. Now, Amar Rav Papa, the first thing we're going to do here is Rav Papa is going to say, this actually wasn't said explicitly by Rabbi Avau, that Rabbi Yochanan said it, but it was learned out from a discussion that came about, okay? And then we're going to read this whole discussion to see how we get that Rabbi Avau said this. So when Rabbi Yirmiyah and then Ravin said that Rabbi Yirmiyah told me that Rabbi Avau said this, it's because he understood that this is the case, okay? So now we're going to read. Amar Rav Papa. This is something the Gemara likes to do a lot. Usually we have statements in the Gemara, and they were statements that people made. They said, this is the case, very clearly. But sometimes it's learned out from a story. Now, sometimes they point that out because sometimes you can maybe misinterpret. Here, I don't think there's room much really for misinterpretation, but they are going to explain to you how we figured out that Rabbi Avau says this. So you need patience because it's going to take some time. You're going to notice Rabbi Avau doesn't even appear yet. So first we start with Rav Idi bar Avin. The Amar Rav Idi, okay, the Amar Rav Idi bar Avin, Amar Rav Amram, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, now we have, again, 4 people quoting Rabbi Yochanan, or 3 people quoting Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabbi Yossi Aglili. And by the way, a lot of the beginning of our sugya is going to be a repeat from sugya we saw in Makot about Lav She'ein Bo Maaseh, about the whole idea about getting lashes on a non-action, because that's a very relevant thing for Shevuot. So Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Kol lo taseh b'Torah, any negative prohibition in the Torah, lav sheyesh bo maaseh, lokin alav. If it has an action, right, you transgress it by doing an action, lokin, you get lashes, right, like eating non-kosher food, lashes. B'she'ein bo maaseh, if it doesn't have an action, ein lokin alav. And generally, speech is not considered an action. Chutz mi, but if you remember this, there's 3 exceptions to the rule. What are the 3 exceptions? Nishba, one who takes an oath. Okay, we're going to get back to this. Meimar, one who does tmura, they designated an animal, and then they, for a sacrifice, and then they just changed their mind and wanted to switch with another animal. You're not allowed to do that. And if you do that, you get lashes. Okay? That even though all you've done is a verbal designation of an animal, you haven't really done anything. And if you curse a friend in the name of God, probably not really your friend, but meaning curse a fellow Jew in the name of God. Nishba minal. And so the one thing that's going to interest us right now is this case of nishba. Where do we get it from? Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Amar kra lo tisat Shem Hashem Elokecha lashav. This is what we learned already in the end of the yesterday's daf, and I reviewed it this morning. One of the reasons was because we're going to have it again today. You cannot take God's name in vain, ki lo yinaket, because there's no atonement. Now, they particularly don't mention the next word is Hashem, right? Ki lo yinaket Hashem. Hashem won't atone. But right now, which is going to be is lo yinaket, to which they learn, which is really because of the word Hashem, Beit din shamala emenakinoto. Okay, God doesn't atone. Aval beit din shamata malkinoto. Okay, the pasuk says because God won't atone for you. Well, that means God won't atone, but the court will. And right, malkinoto minakimoto, right? Because lashes cleanses you. We've learned that many times, right? That by getting the lashes, it atones for you, and then basically, let's say it's karet, you won't get karet because it atones for your sin. Now, Amale Rav Papa Abaye. Now we quoted this earlier, but this is really where it was said. So Rav Papa said to Abaye, remember, we're having a whole development of a sugya going, just so we could get to Rabbi Avahu to prove how we know Rabbi Avahu defines sheker and shav the way we saw here. So Rav Papa says, Tabai, maybe the Torah is telling you there's no way to atone for the sin you use, right? Which could make sense, right? You use God's name in vain. It's a terrible sin, no atonement whatsoever. So they answer no. Rabbi answers it. Iktiv kilo yinakeh. If it had just said kilo yinakeh, and I think that's why when they quoted this before, they didn't quote the next word. If it had just said because there's no way to clean from the sin, then I would have agreed with you. Kidaka amarta, it would be like you said. But hashid iktiv kilo yinakeh Hashem. But because it says God won't cleanse you, God won't atone for you, Hashem hu de'eno menakeh, aval beitin shamata malkinoto menakinoto. And that's how we get to the drasha we already know. Specifically, the beitin does. So that gets us to Shevuot Shav. Okay? Now, if you remember, I just want to remind you, because we're having parallel sugyot here. In the previous sugya, what did we say? Sheker and Shav were said together. Just like in Sheker, where there's an action, because Sheker was future, just like there's an action, because if I say I won't eat and then I eat, I will get lashes for it. Also, Shav, I'm going to get lashes. Also, you could learn Shav from the pasuk, but since there was a different way to interpret the pasuk, they preferred to have Sheker and Shav b'dibur echad. That's how we know that not only on Sheker you're going to be liable, also you're going to be liable for Shav. And again, Sheker and Shav there don't mean the same thing as here. Sheker meant future, Shav meant past. And that's how we got Sheker and Shav. Okay? Here, we're actually, Shav is taking, right, a vain oath, like this is stone when it's really gold, or this is gold when it's really stone. Okay, meaningless oath. And that's the base halacha, comes from there. Okay? Now we're going to say that you get lashes for that. You get lashes for that because of this central drasha of lo yinakeh. That's the main drasha, as opposed to in the previous, it was kind of secondary because it could have been misinterpreted. So we preferred to have the sheker v'shav chad. Now we say, okay, eshgachan Shevuot Shav, Shevuot Sheker minalan. Well, that gets us Shevuot Shav. You're going to get lashes for, because remember, it said what are the exceptions to the rule? Nishba, just said taking an oath. It didn't say what kind of oath. But now they're assuming it's not just oaths that were taken in vain. It's also Shevuot Sheker. And what is Shevuot Sheker according to this interpretation? Future ones, right? I'm sorry, sheker is past, okay? So how do we know past ones? Okay, now, here we're going to get to, right? Last time we knew past ones because we said, 1 second, I just lost this for a second. Right, last time we learned past ones because past ones were shav, and we learned it from sheker. This time, we're going to past ones or we're going to have to figure out, and we're going to learn it from Shav, but in a different way, right? Last time, Shav is what we learned from Sheker. Here, we're going to learn it all from Shav. Okay? So, now they're going to say, Rabbi Yochanan Didei, Rabbi Yochanan himself said, Lashav, Lashav, Shtei Pamim. Because in the pasuk of taking God's name in vain, which again is the stone to gold kind of oath, it says, Lo tisat Shem Hashem Elokecha lashav, right? This is in the Ten Commandments. Don't take God's name in vain. Ki lo yinakeh Hashem et asher yisat shmo lashav. Because God will not clean, atone for one who took God's name in vain. Now it says in vain twice in that pasuk. So why? Lashav, lashav, shtei pamim. By the way, we also saw the sugya in Makot. Im eno inyan l'shvuot shav, tenei inyan l'shvuot sheker. Now we're going to say, okay, this obviously doesn't apply to shav because we already learned shav. So this is an imeno inyan. If there's no point for this word in the pasuk and it's not coming to teach about itself, it must be coming to teach about something else. So what else would it be coming to teach about? If not shav, then sheker. And that's how we get to past. So again, I just want to clarify. In the previous, we said, well, since there's a case of since Shevuot sheker, the future one is actually an action associated with it, and therefore there's lashes, we're going to learn to the past, okay? This one is learning the past from the vain ones, the ones totally different, okay? They don't even make this connection to the future ones, because the future ones aren't called sheker or shav, according to this, right? It's just lo yachel dvaro. So now they say, fine, we learn it from Shav. Now, finally, we get to Rabbi Aval, okay? V'hame bar Rabbi Aval, hai shvuat sheker hechidami. What shvuat sheker are we talking about? Now, it's already obvious, and I explained it to you that way because there was no other way to explain it. But basically, Rabbi Aval is going to come and say, when they learn shvuat sheker from Shav here, which Shvuat Sheker are they talking about? Okay. And then we're going to learn that it must be past. Okay. Why is that? And I didn't explain this to you why yet, but why I was going with past. I mean, obviously we're in this opinion, but what they're going to prove is, okay, maybe I should have said it a little differently, and I'll go back for a second right now. What we did is we proved right now that Shvuat Shav, which is an in vain oath, you get lashes for it. Because we learned from the pasuk. From there, we're going to learn Shvuat Sheker. But what is Shvuat Sheker? Maybe Shvuat Sheker means future. How do you know? It's talking about past. So now Rabbi Abba is going to prove it. Hai Shvuat Sheker hechidami. Ilema, right? It's either past or future, right? So ilema shvua shelo ochal ve'achal. If it's the shvua that I say, I swear I'm not going to eat, and then I eat, well, that's clearly not what we learn because lav yesh bo ma'asehu. You don't need a drasha for that. That's a lav that has an action. I ate. I wasn't supposed to eat. I ate. That's an action. Of course, I'm going to get lashes for that. Ella, okay, so if we think about it today as future A and future B, right? Future A is I won't eat and then you eat. And future B is I say I'm going to eat and I don't eat. Now, the whole question is could it be future A or future B? Well, it can't be future A because that you get lashes for a different reason because it's a lav sheyesh b'maseh. I don't need any drasha for that. And if you want to say it's fush ochal v'lo achal, which actually isn't an action, and now remember, who are we talking about? We're explaining Rabbi Yochanan. This is what Rabbi Yochanan said. Rabbi Yochanan brought this whole thing. So if you say it's a shvuah that I will eat and then I don't eat, hi mi loke. You don't get lashes on that. We know you don't get lashes on it, and we know it from a sugya we learned in Makot. And we know it not only that you don't get lashes, but Rabbi Yochanan himself clearly says you don't get lashes. So this pasuk from Shav to Sheker that's teaching you get lashes can't be on future A because that gets lashes for a different reason because it's an action. And future B, there are no lashes, according to Rabbi Yochanan. So it can't possibly be teaching about that, which leaves us only with past. And therefore, it must be it's talking about past. Okay, and let's go through this. How do we know you don't get lashes on I take an oath that I'm going to eat and then I don't eat? The Ha'itmar was said about this. Shavua she'ochal kikar zo hayom, va'abar hayom v'lo achla. Right, if I take, again, this oath that we just said, I take an oath that I'm going to eat today this loaf of bread. And then later in the day, right, the day passes and I haven't eaten it. Rabbi Yochanan b'Rish Lakish Amri Travai no loket. They both agree you don't get lashes, but each one for a different reason. Rabbi Yochanan Amri no loket. Mishum dehavi lav she'en b'maseh v'chol lav she'en b'maseh and lokina lav. There you have it very clear. Rabbi Yochanan says this is a lav. There's no action and you don't get lashes. He obviously doesn't think this is part of the exception to the rule. So it can't possibly be again. There's our proof. There you have again. What did Rabbi Abahu say? Rabbi Abahu says it's obviously not talking about this case, which means that when it says we're going to learn from Shav to Sheker, what Sheker? Past tense. Okay, but we're going to continue on with the sugya anyway about the future one. Rish Lakish amari no loket mishum dave hatra'at safek hatra'at safek lo shma hatra'ah. What does he say? There's a problem with the warning. In order to get lashes, you need to have a warning. According to Rish Lakish, your warning has to be hatra'at vadai. What is hatra'at vadai? It means that you're about to do an action. And I say, do you know, you're about to murder someone. I say, you know, if you murder this person, you're going to get the death penalty. It says, lo tirtzach. And then I quote you that pasuk. And then you right away, you do it. That's atra badai. Because I know in a minute later whether you're going to do it or not do it. So I warned you, and you're either going to do it or not going to do it. When I warn you, when you're about to take this oath, that I'm taking an oath, I'm going to eat this loaf of bread today, all I could say to you is, you know, if you don't eat this loaf of bread today, you're going to transgress the following pasuk. But it's not clear from that next moment, the fact that you don't immediately eat the loaf of bread, you're not necessarily transgressing it. You have the whole day to eat the loaf of bread. You don't have to eat it that minute. That, according to Rish Lakish, is atrat safek that you won't be able to get lashes for. Rabbi Yochanan thinks you would, but Rish Lakish thinks you don't, and that's why Rabbi Yochanan needs a different explanation. So that's Rish Lakish's reason, but that's a side point. So anyway, comes Rabbi Abahu and says, based on this, it can't be talking about future. It must be when we have this drasha, shav, you may know in Yam, we're going to learn that sheker, you also get lashes. What sheker do you get lashes? It must be referring to past oaths, right? An oath about the past. I ate or I didn't eat. Okay, that's how we learned that Rabbi Avow holds this way and Rabbi Yochanan, because that's what he explained in this whole sugya. Now they ask, Mishna. So now why? Okay, we understand now that everyone agrees that there's no lashes for future, okay, in the case where there's no action. But there are lashes for past. If I said I ate and I lied, I get lashes for that. So the Gemara wants to know why. It sounds kind of arbitrary. If already we're going to say there's an exception for oaths, why don't we make an exception in the future? Or if we're going to say in the future it's a lav shein b'masa, so maybe in the past also we should say it's a lav shein b'masa and you don't get lashes. So why is that? Well, in other words, and really what they're asking is, why is this drasha from shav to sheker only for past? And maybe it should override what Rish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish didn't have to say what they said. They could have said this is an exception to the rule, even though it's a lav shein b'masa, you get lashes for it. Or Rabbi Yochanan at least could have said it. Rish Lakish maybe can't because it's hatrat safek, but Rabbi Yochanan could have said that. So Amarava, beferish ribtat Torah shvuat sheker dumi el shav. Well, because if you're comparing two things, you're going to compare them in the most similar manner. Now, shav, by saying this is a pillar of stone and it's really a pillar of gold for the reverse, that's talking about something that already exists. It's not talking about I'm going to do something and then you don't do it. So if we're going to compare sheker to shav, we're going to compare sheker to shav in a way that they're similar. So just like shav is l'shavar, it's about something that was already. Af sheker nami l'shavar. Okay, it's also about something that was already. Okay, and that's how we get that according to Rabbi Avow, sheker is past tense and shav is in vain, totally useless vow. And if you want to say, what about not keeping my future? I'll do something in the future. That's lo yachel dvaro, which makes sense, right? You have to keep your word, and if you don't, you transgress that. But now we're going to have, and this is a little bit more complicated part of today's daf, but I think if you keep, okay, you have to keep in your head the fact that we have four cases. There's future A and B, right? Future, you can even call it X and check, okay? Future, I won't do it. Future, I will do it. And there's past, I didn't do it. And past, I did do it. Okay, four cases altogether. This is very important to keep in your head because now what we're going to do is, and I'll bring up the study guide. So now we're going to take Rabbi Avau's approach. The Rabbi Avow says, again, it's Rabin in the name of Rabbi Yomi, in the name of Rabbi Avow, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. The sheker is past, and on past you're going to get lashes, right? And that's past vows, that's sheker. So now we're going to say the following. Okay, you get lashes for past. So now we're going to say, wait a minute. Eitivei, Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Avow. So Rabbi Yirmiyah quoted Rabbi Avow saying this, but then said, I have a difficulty with this. Look at the Mishnah Daf Kaf Zayin. Okay, we're going to quote these two in the chart, on the second chart of the page. There's two Mishnayot. One is Daf Kaf Zayin, one is Daf Kaf Tet that are going to come later. And each of them bring an example of a case and then say, in this case specifically, as if like this is the only case that the following thing is going to happen. And then we're going to infer, oh, wait, this means that what case is it excluding? And because there's four cases, it's going to be a question of which of the four cases is it excluding. Okay, that's where we're going to go here. So if you didn't get that, don't worry. That's kind of the outside picture. Now we're going to go in and see. If I swear 3 times in a row that I'm not going to eat this loaf of bread, I just said the language 3 times, and then I ate it, how many times am I obligated? Only one. Okay, so if I said and then I eat it, I'm only liable for one. But that's not important for our purposes right now. What's important? The next line. So this is a future vow. It's future X, okay? Future, I'm not going to do something. Zohi shvuat bitoy. This is the case of shvuat bitoy. Shechayavim al zdona makot al shigata korban olev yoreh. This is the case where I get lashes and I get korban. Now, besides the fact that there's four cases here, and the question is, which case is this excluding? There's also two halachot here. There's makot, you're going to get lashes if you did it intentionally, and you're going to get korban if you did it not intentionally. So we're going to play with all these parameters now. That's basically what's happening. So what's the difficulty in Rabbi Avow? Zoe lemiutemai, what is this case? Future, I won't do it. Future X coming to exclude. My love lemiute achalti below achalti delola. Okay, isn't it coming to say that if you did it on the past, though, in other words, future X gets lashes, but past X and past check, yes, I did eat, no, I didn't eat in the past, wouldn't get lashes. And that goes against Rabbi Avow. Because what did Rabbi Avow just say? Sheker is learned out from Shav. Just like Shav, you get lashes. Sheker, you get lashes. And Sheker is past tense, right, on what you did. So isn't that what it's coming to exclude? And that would contradict Rabbi Abba, to which the Gemara says, like I said, we're going to play with what it's coming to exclude and which punishment or which case. So right now we're going to play with the punishment. Lo, limiute achalti v'lo achalti mi korban. Zohi dal shigata korban olev yoed, aval achalti v'lo achalti lo. ורבי ישמעאל היא דאמר אינו חייב אלא על עתיד לבוא, אבל מילקה לקה. Okay, what does this interpretation do? It says, this case is coming to say, forget the malkot. It's not the malkot that's so unique here. The malkot are also on the past. But it's the focus on the punishment of korban olev yored. If I do it accidentally, since this is a future vow, on that I'll bring the korban olev yored, because that's what it says in the pasuk, lahara o lehiti, future. But on past, I don't bring a korban. Now, whose opinion is this? Remember, that's Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael says the korban olev yored is only on future, like it says in the Torah. It's not on the past. And remember, Rabbi Akiva disagrees with this. That's our Mishnah. Shtayin Shein Arba, it also includes past. So this Mishnah, according to our new interpretation, which resolves Rabbi Abahu's issue, means that this Mishnah is specifically Rabbi Yishmael's approach. Now, we have to remember this because we're going to come back to it. But the main point, let's just put it aside right now. This Mishnah excludes past from korban, but you will get lashes for past. Okay? And that fits with Rabbi Abba. But what's the problem? Turning now to Amud Bet, Ema Seifa. But look at the next Mishnah. Okay, Seifa usually means the end of the Mishnah, but it's not the end, it's the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah, I don't know if it's the next one, but it's one soon after. Probably is the next one. Eizehu Shvuat Shav. What is a Shvuat Shav? Nishba l'shanot et hayadua la'adam. Okay, I'm reading you the whole thing because it doesn't say the whole thing here in the Gemara. Okay, like Amar ala amud shel even shu shel zahav. Okay, that's what we said. You took a pillar of stone and swore that it was gold. Okay, then it says, Zohi, that's not so important, but the important part is this next line. Zohi shvuat shav shechayavin al zdona makot va'al shigata patur. Notice this is different. This is the case of shvuat shav, and this is the case, again, it always sounds, this means not something else. This is the case where you get lashes if you did it intentionally, but there's no korban, because there isn't a korban for shvuat shav. The shvuat, remember, the korban's only if I said, either I'm going to do something or perhaps I did something, but not an oath in vain. Now, so what is this coming to exclude? My lav limiute achalti v'lo achalti delola. Okay, now again, what do we think a shvuat shav is coming to exclude? Now, remember last time we said, well, shvuat shav is on the past. So if it's coming to exclude something, it must be on the past. Saying shvuat sheker about the past, achalti v'lo achalti. Now, what's it coming to exclude? Well, it says, chayavin al zdona makot. You get lashes for the shvuat shav, which sounds like you don't get lashes for achalti v'lo achalti. Okay, now that would go again against Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba said you get lashes for that. That's shvuat sheker that we learned out from Shav. So they say lo. No, you could say differently. Zohi focused not on the malkot, just like we did in the previous, focus on the korban. It said here on a shvuat shav, you're going to be exempt from a korban, because that's not a shvuat bitoy that you get a korban for. And then it would say, lo, zohi da al shigata pator mi korban. But achalti v'lo achalti al shigata chayav korban. Then what's it coming to teach you? So in order to say this doesn't contradict Rabbi Abba, we're going to say, oh, on a shvuat shav, you have no korban. But on a past shvuat, right, achalti o lo achalti, the comparable to the shvuat shav, you will have a korban. Oh, wait, now we have a big problem. What's the problem with this answer? In the answer on the first Mishnah, we said it's Rabbi Yishmael, and it's coming to teach you achalti v'lo achalti, there's no korban. And this is saying achalti v'lo achalti, there is korban. And that's like Rabbi Akiva, right? For Rabbi Akiva, yid mechayev l'sha'avar kela haba, right? Then you would say this Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara questions that and says, wait, Hamar Reisha Rabbi Yishmael, Reisha Rabbi Yishmael, v'sefer Rabbi Akiva? It makes no sense to say that one Mishnah follows Rabbi Yishmael's position and one Mishnah follows Rabbi Akiva's opinion. That makes absolutely no sense. So how are we going to resolve this? Okay, so now again, I think it's very confusing sugya, so I'm going to try to clarify what we did. Each Mishnah had a clarification that this is the only case. And we thought that this all related to the obligation of lashes, and each one excluded past one from lashes, which each raised a problem in Rabbi Abba. To resolve it, we said, no, 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 it's the korban that we're focused on. One said you're obligated a korban, which came to exclude the past that you're not obligated a korban. And the other said you're not obligated a korban, which came to exclude the past that you are chayav a korban. Obviously, those two things contradict each other because then we get to the conclusion that past ones, according to one Mishnah, you aren't obligated korban. According to the second Mishnah, you are obligated korban. One follows Rabbi Shimon, one follows Rabbi Akiva. That doesn't make any sense. So the Gemara is going to explain it differently. Kula Rabbi Akiva. Okay, we're now at the bottom of the chart. And what I did at the bottom here is I showed what all, you can look through, I mean, it's in Hebrew, but hopefully it'll help you, what we did to each one, what we first inferred, then the second inference, and now we're going to actually have a third inference to the first one, okay? So now we're going to say the following. They're both Rabbi Akiva. Now, what did we change right now? Until now, every time we changed the inference, each time we inferred the case was saying, this is different from, right? We had future X is different from past X in check, right? And then we had Shevuot Shav is different than past X in check. And then we just had to, when we had a problem, we switched. Was it the Malka they were focusing on or the Korban? Now we're going to switch what the inference in the first one is. When we said future X comes to exclude past X and check, we're now going to say, no, no, no. Future X comes to exclude future check. Okay? And then it has nothing to do with the past, the first Mishnah. And then the inference has nothing to do with the past. The inference has to do with the other future case. And that's going to resolve our issue completely. So that's what we're going to do. Kula Rabbi Akiva v'reisha lavli mi'utei achalti v'lo achalti mikorban. The reisha is not coming to exclude, oh, achalti v'lo achalti doesn't have to bring a korban. And also, by the way, not lashes, because that was the biggest problem. Ela lemi'utei ochal v'lo achal mimalkot. It's coming to exclude a future case, and it is malkot, like we thought originally. The inference is about the lashes, but it's not about future versus past. It's about future versus future. And this we already knew a million times over. If you say, I'm not going to eat, you get lashes, right? Because then in the end, you did eat, you did an action. But if I say, I'm not going to eat, I'm sorry, you say, I am going to eat, and then you don't eat, there's no action, you won't get lashes. So this Mishna is coming to say, this is the case where you get lashes, but you're not going to get lashes on a case where future check, right? Future, I will eat, no lashes there, okay? Abal korban mechayev, but forget this part. Al shigat korban. On that case, on both cases, you're going to have korban because those are our two cases of korban o leviyored, lahara o lehitiv. Future, I won't do it. Future, I will do it. Future X, future check. Okay. Now they finished this sugya. Okay, this complicated sugya with this one last line. Umayshna. Now, why would you say? Okay, here's an interesting question. Why would you say the future? Okay, when we say the case of future X, future, I won't do something. Specifically, this is high of this and this is high of that, right? And it comes to exclude future, I will do something. Why would you prefer that to future versus past? Maybe future is coming to exclude the past cases. So they say, no, mistabra kai b'lahaba me'et lahaba, kai b'lahaba me'et l'shaval. Because if the topic is future, then it makes sense to say it's coming to exclude another future case. It doesn't make as much sense to say that it's coming to exclude a past case. So therefore, this actually makes more sense, and it also fixes Rabbi Abau's, the problem with Rabbi Abau, that it would seem, right, that first inference was you don't even get lashes for past, and he said that's the Shevuot checker that we're going to learn out from the Shevuot Shav, and with that we resolved the issue. Okay, now it was a little complicated. You can try to follow again and look back at the charts. They should hopefully help. Okay. New sugya. Remember in the Mishnah we had, okay, we kind of left that, so now we have to remember, but we had Rabbi Akiva, who basically said, if I take an oath, I'm not going to eat, and I eat a little bit, not a shear, not like a kazayit, like usually in food related for prohibitions, I am liable for any bit that I eat. And the rabbis disagree with him completely. They said, what do you mean? It's a food, you have to eat a requisite amount to be liable for going against your oath. So now we're going to learn that Rabbi Shimon has an approach in general that there is no requisite amount for food. For if I eat non-kosher food, I eat a little bit, I'm chayiv. Yom Kippur, I ate a little bit, I'm liable. Okay, that was Rabbi Shimon's approach. The Gemara is going to ask, is Rabbi Akiva, when he says it, is it just in oaths, which is kind of the way we explained it, or it is the way we explained it. Remember, we gave Rashi and Tosfot as to what the two reasons are why he's so strict here. Is it because just this is stricter because usually you're not liable for a korban for speech, and here you are. So Tosfot said, oh, that just makes it stricter, so we're going to have no requisite amount. According to Rashi, it's because it's not an Isur Achila, it's an Isur Shvuah. And therefore, if it was an Isur Achila, like eating non-kosher, it would be a kazayit. This is not an Isur Achila. You said, I won't do something, and you did it. It doesn't matter requisite amount. Okay, so that's the way we explained it. But the Gemara is going to suggest that maybe that's not Rabbi Akiva. Maybe Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi Shimon all the time. That's our question. Ibayil. Rabbi Akiva. B'chola Torah kula Rabbi Shimon svirale t'machai b'mashu. Does he hold like Rabbi Shimon in all of the Torah that you're liable for eating any little bit? Did Tanya? How do we know that Rabbi Shimon holds this? Because it says in a Braita, Rabbi Shimon Omer, kol shu lemakod. Okay, now we're going to learn it's not exactly true that he says kol shu, but he does say kol shu. You eat anything, like if I eat non-kosher meat and you warn me before, you know, if you eat this non-kosher meat, it's forbidden, you're going to get lashes, and I eat it, a teeny bit of it, I get lashes. But lo amru kazayit. So what's the kazayit for? It's not like he says there is no such thing as a kazayit in olive bulk, like for requisite amounts. Well, le'inyan korban. Like if I ate chaylev and I didn't realize it was chaylev, and this forbidden fat, right? I eat it by accident. I have to bring a korban. Well, I'm only going to bring a korban if I ate a requisite amount. And that's what he says. The requisite amount relates to korban, to sacrifice, not for lashes. Ubedinhu. Okay, so now here comes our thinking about Rabbi Akiva. Does he? We're going to bring our two sides. Bedinu debai iflagu ba'alma. Now, maybe he really disagrees with Rabbi Shimon across the board, which means we should have brought this machloket in general. So now we have to explain why did we only bring it in the case of the oath? Well, the reason why they mentioned it here was lehodiacha kochan de Rabbanan. They wanted to specifically tell you the rabbi's opinion, that even in oath, the rabbis don't agree with Rabbi Akiva. No, they disagree across the board. But specifically here, it was a unique reason to tell you, you might have thought the rabbis agree with Rabbi Akiva specifically with oaths, but they don't. Even though you could theoretically say, if I specified, I swear I won't eat a drop of food today, and then I eat a drop of food, I'm clearly going to be liable according to everybody because I said, right, my word was a drop of food. Well, then maybe if I say, I swear I'm not going to eat, maybe my meaning is a drop of food. You might have thought the rabbis hold that way. Kamash de Patre. And that's why they had to bring up in our Mishnah that here the rabbis still disagree with Rabbi Akiva. They disagree always, but they still disagree with Rabbi Akiva. That's option one. O Dilma, Ba'alak Rabbanit Spirale, or maybe in general, Rabbi Akiva holds like the rabbis. Every Easter needs a requisite amount. Hacha, just here, Hainutama, Ho'il Mefarish, Chayav, Stam Nami Chayav. Exactly the reason we said before. Here he disagrees because since if I would have said a morsel, I would have been obligated. So even though I didn't, maybe that's really what I meant. And therefore he would obligate you here, but only here. Okay, those are our two sides. So now we're going to bring sources to try to prove what Rabbi Akiva really holds. Tashma, let's use our Mishnah first. To Amrlo Rabbi Akiva, they said to him, where have we ever heard, right? One of the claims they said to him, there's no case where you're chayav for mashu, so why would you say you're chayav here, right? There's no precedent for this. Now, if he really did believe in all of the Torah, you're liable for a mashu. Lamely, we should have responded to them on a Torah kula, Rabbi Shimon svirale. I hold like Rabbi Shimon. I think all of it, right? That whole claim was what makes this case unique, and he should have said, this case isn't unique. I just think this is my opinion across the board. And the fact that he didn't say that proves he doesn't think that. They're not convinced because they could say like this. Maybe Rabbi Akiva, when he answered and he didn't bring that answer, is because he was trying to answer them according to their opinion. He was saying, he was speaking according to their opinion. And what he really is saying, and we do this a lot, Lididi, according to me, Rabbi Shimon's really. I actually hold like Rabbi Shimon, and I think this is across the board. Liditru, but you, at least Odelimia, Ho'il Mefarish Chayav, Stam Nami Chayav. At least admit to me that in this case you agree with me. I know we disagree in all the other cases, but in this case I think you should agree with me because if I had said a morsel, I would have been liable for a morsel, and that obviously you agree with. So maybe if I say I swear I won't eat, maybe I really mean a morsel, and I'll also be liable. But Amrle Rabbanan lo, and the rabbis don't agree with him. Okay, and then according to that, you could read the Mishnah as they disagree completely. But now we're going to bring two other sources which prove that Rabbi Akiva really doesn't disagree completely. He only disagrees in this case. Tashma. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Nazir shesharat pito b'yayin. A Nazir can't drink wine. What if he dipped a little bit of wine, not a requisite amount, in bread, and then he eats the bread? If the bread with the wine together is a kazayit, he's liable, even though it's not usually in wine, it's a revit, it's not quarter log of wine. But since it's bread now, if you have a requisite amount of bread and the bread is soaked in wine, you'll be liable. Obviously, if you held like Rabbi Shimon, he wouldn't need the kazayit. You would just say, you're obviously liable because he ate a little bit of wine. So that's a good proof. And Odsnan, and also it says, Shevuot shelo ochal, v'achal nevelot u'trefot shkatzim u'ramasim chayav, for Rabbi Shimon poter. I take an oath that I won't eat any food, and then I eat non-kosher food. It's my oath on the non-kosher food. Now we get to this mushba va'omed, mehar Sinai. So, according to Tanakama, you're chayav. According to Rabbi Shimon, you're exempt. The Habina, and they asked, am I chayav? Why would you be obligated? Mushba va'omed, mushba mehar Sinai. You already took the oath at Har Sinai not to eat non-kosher food, so you shouldn't be liable for the oath. Obviously, you're liable for eating non-kosher food, but you shouldn't get lashes for going against your oath. So we're going to have two different interpretations. The first one isn't really relevant, but Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yochanan da Amre Travayu, it's actually weird, it's not Travayu, it's three of them, Bekolel Dvarim HaMutarim Im Dvarim HaAsurim. This would apply because this is what's called an Isur Kolel. You included all foods, which includes even forbidden things. Okay, if you just said, I'm taking an oath not to eat non-kosher food, it wouldn't apply. But if you say all foods, and all foods includes non-kosher foods, it should apply. Now, Rabbi Shimon exempts because he thinks that's only true for Isurim. It's not true for an oath. An oath doesn't apply to another oath. Okay, so that's a machloka. We don't have time to really delve into that right now. But Rish Lakish Amar, Iya Talmud say Ella. Now here we're going to get to what Rabbi Akiva holds because it's going to say like this. That case must be a unique case. Like, for example, if you hold like the rabbis, b'mefaresh chatzi shiur ba'aliba de Rabbanan. According to the rabbis, you're only chayav on a kazayit, right? Now, if you specified in your oath, also for an oath, you're only chayav a kazayit. But if you specified in your, and then that would be a shvuah chalal shvuah. But if, because it's exactly the same thing, you can't eat a shiur, right, a kazayit, because of your oath, you can't eat a kazayit of non-kosher food. It's the same thing, and then it won't apply. But if you said, I won't eat half a shiur, meaning less than a shiur, okay? In your oath, you said, I won't even eat a morsel of food, then it will apply to the non-kosher food as well, because there's no Isser by Torah to eat a teeny bit of non-kosher food. The ibistam ba'aliba to Rabbi Akiva. Now, according to Rabbi Akiva, what did we say? In an oath, you didn't have to say a morsel. You could have just said, I swear I won't eat meat, and I swear I won't eat food, and it already applies to even a teeny amount. Now, there's no mushba va'omed, because according to the Torah, you're only liable for kazayit. So the way Rish Lakish explains it, according to Rabbi Akiva, proves that Rabbi Akiva thinks that other ones, right, forbidden Torah laws are all a kazayit, and that's why this one will apply, because your oath, without even specifying anything, was already applied to a case that wasn't forbidden by Torah law, because forbidden by Torah law is only kazayit, and that's why it would work. Because in an oath, he forbids himself by anything, and then that would apply to the non-kosher food, right? And Isa Gadatach. Ba'alma Rabbi Shimon's spirule, if you think he holds like Rabbi Shimon, kol shunami mushba ba'omei mehar Sinai, then already non-kosher food, you're liable for any teeny amount, and then this oath wouldn't apply at all, and you wouldn't be liable. Ela lav shmamina ba'alma Rabbanan spirule shmamina. At least the way Rish Lakish understood Rabbi Akiva is that Rabbi Akiva only held it in the oath case, and that's the only way to explain that situation. And that's where we finish our daf. Bit of a long daf, but let's summarize. We started with these two different approaches: what shvuah checker, what shvuah chav. When do you get malkot and why do you get malkot in all those cases? They actually agree in which cases you get lashes. The question is how they learn it, right? Each one differently. And then we got to we had this long-winded discussion. Kind of first we explained how we knew Rabbi Akiva said this in the name of Rabbi Yochanan because he didn't say it explicitly. It just came out of a discussion. And then we brought these Mishnayot, which seemed to contradict Rabbi Akiva, but we've resolved all the difficulties. And then we moved on to this opinion of Rabbi Akiva, and we brought two options. Does Rabbi Akiva hold this in the whole Torah, like Rabbi Shimon, that you're only liable for lashes if you ate, right? You're even liable for lashes, even kol shu, the kazayit is not relevant for lashes, only for korban. Or did he not say that, and he just said it specifically in our case? In the end, we say he just said it specifically by oaths, kind of the way we understood the Mishnah in the first place, and it's not a general approach of his. With that, we finish for today. Wishing everyone a good day and Shishma B'Sarot Tovot.